Some of this corn behind me is about 15 feet tall. Today I'm going to harvest it, process it, and show you how I make silage in a barrel. Now that I have all these stalks pulled, I'm going to remove the root wads before I mulch. I can either use my lopper shears as I'm doing here, or sometimes I'll use a rice knife. Next step is going to be to mulch all this down. I'm going to let it sun dry for a few hours to get some of the moisture out of it. It took me about 45 minutes to mulch that up with my mower, and I will acknowledge that that's not exactly the best tool for the job. However, it can be done. Sometimes you have to use what you have. So I'm going to go ahead and spread this out, give it a couple hours in the sun to have a little bit of this moisture drawn out, and then after a couple hours of sun drying, I'll go ahead and start packing it. If it turns out that you don't have enough material, you can use the lawn clippings to stretch your corn silage so that you'll be able to make sure that you have enough to fill up your entire vessel. I'm going to be adding molasses to the corn, but I'm not going to add it straight. I'm going to dilute it at a ratio of 4 to 1. So 1 part molasses, 4 parts water. So I'll add about a gallon to this 5-gallon bucket, and then I'll fill the remainder of it with water. Molasses provides a readily available food source for the acids that are going to be present in the fermentation process. This happens to be a bucket that I paid $25 for. It's not a high grade molasses, but it doesn't need to be for what I'm using it for. So I'll fill this up about 1/4 of the way, and then I'll fill the remainder of it with water. So my ratio will be about 4 to 1. I'm going to call that a quarter. There's a couple different options for drenching this material. You can either do it while it's spread out on the tarp, get it all coated nicely by either using like a garden watering can, maybe a backpack sprayer, or what I actually like to use is just straight out of the 5-gallon bucket. And I take a lid and I drill a bunch of holes in it, snap that on, and then I can just apply directly out of my 5-gallon bucket. I'm going to forego doing it while it's all spread out because that method, in my opinion, is quite messy. You have to handle that material after it's already been coated with the sticky molasses, and it's just kind of a messy process. So I'm going to go ahead and layer this in and treat it as I go. So what I'll wind up doing is putting about 4 to 5 inches in, packing it, and then coating it another 4 to 5 inches, packing it, removing all of the air that I can, coating it, and keep doing that successively until I fill it all the way up. Here's a view inside of the first layer of about 4 to 5 inches of material. And then I've used that tamper right there to pack it down so as to remove as much air as possible. And then I am going to add a bit of molasses and then continually repeat that process. I'm adding about a 1/2 gallon per layer as I raise this up. I've just added a wheelbarrow load of grass clippings. And this has a lot of clover in it, and it's pretty clean, so it'll wind up getting integrated into this, and it'll help to just add to the digestibility and the nutrient value of this. This will be a very high quality digestible forage. In between each layer, I'm able to get up and stomp down on this and compress as much air out of it as possible. Hopefully I won't have to process more, but I may wind up running out. Now that I've stomped this down, I'm going to go ahead and add a bit more of the molasses, and then another layer, stomp down, another layer. I would say this thing's probably weighing about close to 450 pounds. All of the corn stalks that I removed from the side of the house yesterday, which was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 300 of them, only wound up filling this barrel to this line right here, about 3/4 of the way full, before I had to go and process more material from another area where I'm growing some corn. Really want to make sure you get all the voids filled, so it just takes time. And then I'll get back up on top of this and stomp on it. It'll compress more, add more material, and then come back in and do just like I'm doing now, forcing it down into those voids. Because ultimately, this will be sealed with plastic over the top. I'll tape it, and then I'll cover it with the lid, but this will be completely full and filled to the top. If you don't do that, then oxygen winds up being introduced into this space and you wind up with spoilage. The material down lower won't spoil, but what you'll wind up with is an upper layer that will be spoiled and you'll have to get rid of it. That's the idea, is just keep packing it down, adding material, packing it down, layering it with the molasses, bringing in more material, compressing, more molasses, more material, compressing, and just keep repeating that until you can't do it anymore. Even when you think it's full, keep getting up on top of here and you'll be able to compress more. And that's the idea. Yeah, this molasses really helps with the overall processing and the fermenting of this. It's a readily available carbohydrate that the lactic acid is going to be able to consume and feed upon in the fermentation process. And it also, it increases the palatability for the animals that are going to be consuming it. They like the taste of the molasses. They're going to want to more readily consume this. So it's good in that sense as well. Yeah, and that smells good. Lift your foot up. Okay, and other foot. It's a little warm. Other foot, and then we'll get this baby cinched down. Ooh, that is hot. All right, you can come off. It's been about 36 hours, so I'm gonna reseal. I should be able to utilize this material in about a month. It'll store for long periods of time, but it really stores best when you don't wind up with a lot of wild temperature fluctuations. If this was kept in a cool environment, stored in a cellar or someplace where the temperature isn't going to vary significantly, get super hot, super cold, it's going to last longer. This will store quite well throughout the entire rest of the summer and can be used this next winter. You could store this for up to 3 years. The longer you store something, the less the food value is going to be retained. It's going to start to diminish at that point. So it's just like any food storage that you would have. The more stable the temperature is, if it's restricted from getting any sunlight into it, if it's excluded from oxygen, and it remains at a constant temperature, it's going to store much better. This is no different than anything that you'd be putting up in your pantry. But this will be getting fed to a steer that we're going to be raising for butcher. This will be used to supplement what he was getting otherwise. I hope this helps give you some ideas on what you can do with some of your excess crop residue. Thanks for watching.